Bob Ferguson of the Sonoma County Astronomical Society tells us about the history of the Striking Sparks project.
I'd like to tell you about the Sparks program, Larry. It began as a concept some years ago, trying to get young people interested in astronomy and looking up at the stars and trying to put themselves and our world in perspective with the rest of the universe. And we tried, that is our Astronomical Society here in the county, have tried a number of ways to get young people interested. And one day I was traveling with a gentleman, he's a fire investigator, working on a case, and he had a letter from his son, and it turned out that he had just been accepted as an associate astrophysics professor, that is, at Caltech in Southern California. And Don was telling me about how this all began. It all began when he and his son made a telescope out of a 6-inch piece of glass. And I said, you never know what's going to strike the spark, do you, Don? He says, no, you don't really know. And that was the beginning. That really started things going with my son. And from that came this concept of striking sparks. So some members of our society, our Astronomical Society here in Sonoma County, decided, well, perhaps if we can build some telescopes and then work some scheme for awarding them to some youngsters that are really interested, we can strike some sparks here. So last year was the first year we did this. We sent letters out to the science teachers in the Sonoma County school system and asked them to screen their youngsters and try to select those that seemed very interested in astronomy and in this aspect of science, and then write a paragraph on why you think this child should receive a telescope, and then have the child write a paragraph on why they feel that they should get a telescope and what they would do with it. And we got 38 of these letters last year, and we had designed and constructed 7 telescopes. So we went ahead and, with the assistance of some very, very fine people, very talented people, got the telescopes built and went over to the Adobe State Park here in Petaluma and awarded these 7 telescopes to these youngsters. And that was so much fun and it went so well, we decided to try it again this year. And this year we're going to award 10 telescopes. And you're looking at the finished product here, telescope number 1. Will be ready for the giveaway here in 2 weeks. Inside the telescope, mounted at the rear, is a 5.5-inch mirror, ground and polished and figured to a fraction of a wavelength of light. Mounted in the back, the light comes down the telescope. It's a classical Newtonian type instrument, and it strikes the mirror, reflects back up here to a second mirror that catches the light and brings it out to the side so you can observe into the eyepiece without getting your head in the way of the light. Now, since the telescope itself only sees a small piece of sky, it's difficult to find objects occasionally, so we put a finder on which has a low magnification and very, very wide field. And this is used to locate your position in the sky, and then you go to the eyepiece to observe the objects. I'd like to have you meet one of the gentlemen that had a great deal to do with the actual construction of the mounts themselves, and the mirror mounts, and the little spider that holds the secondary mirror. This little device inside is called the spider, and that holds a secondary mirror, which you can see right the edge of it right here. And these are all, were all designed and constructed by one of our members. I'd like you to meet Larry McCune.
Larry McCune, I got started in this project of striking sparks with Bob, and he talked me into building a telescope a few years ago, and I got interested in this and thought I'd like to pass along these benefits to others that might like to get involved in amateur astronomy. My job in this project has been to build these mounts. You can see these bases here with the swivel or horizontal axis and a vertical axis. They have some aluminum and Teflon bearings in here, and the holders for the tubes. And I've been involved in that part of it, and to build these spiders and mirror mounts. I've enjoyed doing that, as well as polishing some of the mirrors and working on some of the telescope parts with Bob. It looks like you've got some telescope parts there that you've been working on.
Well, you're right, Larry. What we did, in order to keep the cost down, we found that if we made the mirror 5.5 inches in diameter, we could put it in a piece of plastic irrigation pipe that's 6 inches inside diameter, and it just fit beautifully. Whereas if we made a 6-inch mirror, we'd have to buy some high-priced impregnated plastic, which is about $55 worth for a piece that size, and that piece of plastic here we're looking at cost about $8, so it became an economical way to do it. But the thing was, where are you going to get 5.5-inch glass? We can't buy it commercially, so we bought some big chunks of glass. This is about a 14-inch diameter, and then made a cutter and cut 5.5-inch discs out, and then we took these 5.5-inch pieces of glass and ground the mirrors from that. There's some good. This is actually the end of a 5-inch shell casing, which is about 5.5 inches or a little larger in diameter inside. This is where the primer hole went, the cap went in the shell itself. The steel cap, I just cut the end of it off and notched it, and that went in the drill press, and that made the cutter to cut the discs out for the 5.5-inch mirrors. It takes about, oh, maybe 20-25 minutes to cut that 3/4-inch piece of glass all the way through. Come down into the shop, we'll show you how we handle that piece of glass after we get it cut out, grinding process and polishing, and perhaps a little bit of the silvering end of it as well.
Bob, I noticed you have some music playing down here. Is that the proper tempo for grinding mirrors?
That's just exactly right. It's good polka music, and it's just right for grinding mirrors. It's a good rhythm. Keeps you cranked up and going all the time. And just to give you a little idea of what happens when we cut these pieces of glass out, we have to grind a curve in the glass, and you can do it by hand or use good old PG&E power and do it by machine, and I choose to do it by machine. And what happens is, we put a piece of glass on the bottom part that, as you notice, is rotating, and the mirror that will become the piece that will become the mirror goes on top, and in between the two, I put a little bit of grinding compound, carborundum, and some water, with some weight, and then put the two pieces of glass together and turn the machine on. Rotate the bottom one and sweep the top one back and forth across the bottom is the tool, the top becomes the mirror. And what happens is that the tool becomes convex and the mirror becomes concave. Grind that down to the point so that it will reflect the light from the right distance, that is, to get the proper distance for focusing. Then once that focus is achieved, that is, the focusing distance is achieved with the coarser compounds, then we go to fine compounds right on down to as fine as 7,000 microns or 1/7,000. And that becomes the final grind, and we can do that all on the machine if we're careful. And once the mirror is fine ground, it's ready for polishing.
What sort of a setup do you have for polishing, Bob?
Key to it all is we melt some pitch, regular old pine pitch. Take the tool, heat it up first, and pour a layer of that pitch on top of the tool, and then use a rubber mat, place it on top of the tool now, and put the mirror on top so that the mat presses into the pitch. And as soon as it cools a bit, you take the mat off then.
And that becomes the polishing tool, I guess.
Exactly. Then you put the mirror back on here and press it lightly so that the pitch conforms precisely to the curve of the mirror. We use a little cerium oxide as a polishing compound. That's that yellow product on there. And I have a mirror here in the polishing, in the final polishing stages. As you can see, the tool is anchored firmly in a barrel of water. This is what they call the Armstrong method. And this is the mirror. Now this mirror is almost fully polished out. In fact, it is polished out. At this stage we are trying to correct the curve down to a fraction of a wavelength of light so that it will focus all of the light back to the point that we want. Now I'm not sure you can catch this layer or not, but if you can look across that surface, maybe I'm too close, you can see that there's actually a curve on that piece of glass, and that will be the mirror. You get that in your machine?
Right.
Okay, now the process for polishing, water, cerium oxide, and the mirror has been pressed on the pitch so that the two surfaces conform. And now we're talking about millionths of an inch or even fractions of millions, and the process is simply rub the two surfaces together. Every once in a while give it a little twist so that you don't work any errors into that curve.
You sort of work your way around the barrel also, I guess, to kind
You
of
walk around
polish it
so that
evenly.
you're not working on the same direction on the lap each time. And the end result is you end up with a curve that is precise to, as I said before, fractions of millionths of an inch, and that's what we're attempting to achieve.
When you get down in that final polishing stages, I guess you check the curve on the glass, don't you, on your test bench?
Right, you need to know what it looks like at this stage, and for that we have another device that's quite simple, and yet it is so precise that we can detect errors in that curve down to a fraction of a wavelength of light.
Here in the test bench here, and then you're going to look at it with a light like a star.
Yes, exactly right. Since
At the other, some distance away, now you're going to prepare to look at that surface, huh?
Right, this is what they call a focal tester, and although this looks a little complex, it doesn't have to be this complex. It's quite simply what happens is the light, since we don't always have a star when we want it or where we want it, we make an artificial star by perforating a little piece of foil and putting a light bulb behind it. Now the light shines through that hole and goes out and hits the mirror. The mirror catches the light and focuses it back. And at the center of curvature of the mirror, that light will focus back to a point. And now we intercept that point with a razor blade right here, called a knife edge. And as I move it across the focus of the mirror, what happens, if that is a perfect sphere back there, the light coming back to my eye will shimmer a bit, and then it'll just go out all at once, if it's a sphere. Now, if a part of that mirror is deeper than the rest, then that will turn dark before the rest of the mirror. So you have a very good feel of what that curve looks like.
Turn the lights off here and see what that looks like.
All right.
Looking in here with a Ronchi grating, and I'm seeing some parallel lines. What does that mean?
Yeah, Larry, there are two tests that we use. One, after we have it parabolized, we deepen the center a little bit, and the next thing we want to know is if, in fact, that curve is regular clear out to the edge. And to check that out, we use what they call a Ronchi test, and that's R-O-N-C-H-I was the man that developed it. And we simply put the light onto the mirror now from a tiny slit, and then it reflects back again. We reflect it back through a grating of 100 lines to an inch. And if that mirror has a spherical surface, those lines that we see will be parallel. And if the curve is a good curve, they will be equally spaced clear out to the edge. Now, if the mirror is parabolic, those lines will bend out from the center when you're inside of focus. And again, the spacing between the lines should be regular clear out to the edge. And if that's true, then you do have a good smooth surface.
Looks like you have a pretty good sphere there. Bob, looks like you're working here today to judge the contestants for the telescope awards. Could you explain what's going on and also introduce the officers of the club?
Yes, Larry, you're absolutely right, and this is probably a lot tougher than making the telescopes, just trying to decide which of the 41 nominees will get the telescopes, one of the 10 telescopes. And I'd like to introduce some of the officers of our organization here. I guess they sit as the board of directors and anything else that needs doing. Bob Smith, our president. Hello. And vice president over here, he's the guy that puts out one of the finest newsletters of any amateur organization that I have ever seen. That's George Lawyer. He's one of the early founders of this organization. And one of our newer members and secretary is Paul Loudon.
Bob, you're also officer, aren't you?
Well, yes, somebody has to take care of the money, and I'm the treasurer. Yeah.
Right.
He's been at it for a while.
And we wrote to the science teachers in the county school system and asked them to screen their students and select those that they felt would really benefit by having a telescope. Now, these are students in the intermediate and junior high school grades. I guess they go clear from what?
Before you go, we had applicants this time from kindergarten through 11th grade.
Kindergarten clear through 11th grade. That's quite a span. We asked the instructors, the teachers, to write a paragraph on the student and why the instructor feels that they would benefit by a telescope, and then asked the student to write in their own hand why they really wanted a telescope, what they would do with it. of the 41, as I mentioned earlier, and then we have to sit down and read these things and decide who's going to get them.
All right, and pretty soon you'll have the results of those for the telescope giveaway next week, right?
We have 9 of them at the moment, and we're right at the moment, I hate to say quibbling over, but we're re-evaluating the number 10th, the 10th telescope.
We have a tie,
We have a tie.
and that's makes it all the harder.
Yeah.
So collecting ballots, going to have your ballot fall on it.
So hard.
Yeah, when this is over, I'm sure the recipients will be happy with the telescope. They're nearing completion now, and,
Well, we've
and
got
the members are going to be working on them today for assembly, and we'll look at that next. The eyepiece mounts are being prepared. The work team's cutting the telescope tubes into length from irrigation pipe. Everyone arrives at the Petaluma Adobe State Park with the telescopes ready for the giveaway.
Little finders look good, a little small, but
Well, yeah, yes and no. You know, a lot of it's
welcome everyone to the second annual presentation of the Striking Sparks project from the Sonoma County Astronomical Society. For those of you who haven't heard of us, we're a group of 150 or so people who have interest in the stars and other objects in the sky. We have a monthly meeting in Santa Rosa at Proctor Terrace School where we try to have a presentation and plan our club events, and we also have a monthly star party up near the geysers where we like to go with our telescopes and have real dark skies and pursue our interest in looking at objects in the night sky. And our biggest yearly project is what we have going here today, which is the Striking Sparks project, where the club members put in their time and energy to build some telescopes, and we send out entries to the schools around the county and try to find some children who are interested in astronomy. And our goal is to strike the spark of interest in them so that they can pursue something that might lead into something that would be a good positive influence in their lives, give them something to climb on. Another aspect of the Sparks project which we like is that we show, by doing this work for children who we don't know yet, we like to think that we're showing kids that there are people out there who care about their future and are willing to do something to help them along. One of the things I enjoyed when we were reading the entries was some of the teachers were very eloquent also in their dedication to helping the kids out. One of the teachers had 3 winners from West Side School, and that was Carlin Burrow, who's I thought was quite dedicated in her paragraphs for the children.
I had inspirational material to work with. My 3 students were easy to write about.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce a couple people who were instrumental in making this event happen. Bob Ferguson. Come on, stand up. Is he around? Bob Ferguson he's the driving force behind the club and the driving force behind the project. He hand-ground the mirrors, twisted the arms to make the whole project come together, and it was his idea in the first place. We're all really glad that he's been the inspiration for us. Larry McCune was his construction assistant. Burned some late-night oil getting this project in on time. And George Lawyer, the club vice president, who's also a long-term member, did all the paperwork and got the entries out and got the applications in and made sure we all got together to make the choice, and did quite a bit of work also. Without further ado, I would like to bring the winning children up and get them near the telescopes, and then ask Bob Ferguson to give us a little lecture on what to do with these things. We had Victor Hopkiss from the Altamira School. Victor, are you around?
Yeah, right here.
All right. Bodie Krause from the West Side School. Rachel Lulin, okay, from the Doyle Park School. Erica Nelson, West Side School. Bianca Olson from Monte Rio. Ann Samuel Simmons from Roseland Elementary. They both wrote very good entries. Carrie Sloat from Hillcrest School. Aaron Thompson from Bennett Valley School. Transito Vega from West Side School. And Oriel Zales from Monte Rio. Well, congratulations, kids. I think you're getting some very nice telescopes here, and we hope that it gives you the interest and equipment you need to pursue your interest. There's some fundamentals you need to learn about for using a telescope, and you'll be honorary members of the club. We encourage you to come to our meeting. What you need to do is learn so you don't make any mistakes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I hate to start out with a negative, but there's one thing you cannot do with a telescope. You cannot look at the sun with it because it'll burn your eye out just like that, and that is permanent. That eye will never see again. So your top is a telescope. It's designed with, it's got a wide field of view, and there's a cross here. So when you look through it, you put the crosshairs on the object you want to see, and then you look in this eyepiece and you will see the object highly magnified. Efficacy mount, there's a little story about this. We have limited funds, and we can only make so many of these things with the money available. And the gadget that we would have to buy to put an eyepiece in for focusing was about $45. And multiply that by 10, you see you're talking about quite a bit of money. Well, we discovered that by using a piece of sync plumbing, which cost $2, that the eyepiece fits very nicely in there. And then we made this, we made that hole and put a little padding there so that thing fits with it. It focuses very nicely. By doing that, we're able to make about 4 more telescopes. Now, everything in here was manufactured with the exception of this and this. The spider that holds the little diagonal, the mount for the mirror. The base itself is a design made by Larry McHugh.
Right there with the camera.
And it's unique. It's unique with the Sparks program. There are no other telescopes in the world look like this one. Just a very, very special design that Larry put together, and it's become the telescope for Sparks. And we're proud of it, and we're mighty proud of the youngsters.
They have to pick up their telescopes.
Bob invites everyone to the Astronomy Day event.
Over by Kmart shopping center, we're going to have a big 16-incher set up out there, looking at the moon. We're going to have the telescopes at the school.
Sebastopol Road, right?
Junior high on Sebastopol Road.
Right. Down Sebastopol Road on that left side.
The telescope set up there, and also up at the old Safeway shopping center in Healdsburg.
New Safeway.
The new Safeway parking lot in Healdsburg.
See it in there? All right, yeah.
Good treat sometimes.
Maybe put on that sign, that orange and white sign.
Point to the astronomy class.
It's very far away.
Try to get there.
I mean, it's going to be blurry no matter
To
what
look
you
at
look
stuff
at.
that's up close is binoculars.
The people will be at Safeway as early as 7, so that early.
Yeah.